I ruined my grandson's wedding before it ever began. Not with shouting, not with drama, with one sentence I was never supposed to say out loud. Marcus Chen was standing in front of the mirror when it happened. Evening light filtered through the curtains, and the tuxedo fit him like it had been waiting for this moment. He looked confident in that fragile way young men do when they believe commitment has finished testing them. I stood behind him, adjusting a tie that did not need fixing. My hands moved out of habit while my chest tightened for reasons I did not want to name. The room smelled like pressed wool and expensive cologne someone had gifted too early. Everything looked perfect. Everything felt wrong. Marcus met my eyes through the mirror and smiled, easy, trusting. That smile almost stopped me. Almost. His phone vibrated on the dresser. A message from his future father-in-law, Robert Harrison. A warm reminder about tomorrow's breakfast. Thoughtful words, genuine concern, all the right things said in the right tone. I had heard that tone before, years ago, in a quiet office with contracts on the desk and a man smiling while he asked me to sign. That memory pressed against my ribs. I leaned closer so my voice would not have to carry far. I did not raise it. I did not dramatize. I spoke the way you warn someone when danger is already present. Listen to me, Marcus, I said. Never tell Robert Harrison about the company shares. The air shifted, not loudly, not suddenly, just enough for me to know the words had landed. He did not turn around. His smile stayed in the mirror, but it faltered at the edges. Grandfather, he said quietly. Not now. I wish I had listened. But instincts are not polite. And silence has a cost. My name is David Chen. I raised my grandson alone. There was no wife stepping in when things got difficult. No relatives sharing the load. No safety net waiting if I stumbled. It was just me and a young boy who needed someone steady enough to make the world feel secure. I learned early that fear teaches faster than comfort. So I did everything I could to keep fear away from his childhood. I worked when I was exhausted. I stayed composed when I was terrified. I learned how to carry anxiety quietly so he would not have to. That kind of life sharpens you, not loudly, gradually. You begin to notice patterns. The way certain handshakes linger too long. The way people moderate their voices when they want compliance. The way assistance sometimes arrives carrying obligations. I buried mistakes before I buried people. And those mistakes taught me more than any advice ever could. I learned that danger does not always arrive aggressive. Sometimes it comes prepared. Sometimes it wears expensive suits and says it is only trying to help. Sometimes it uses words like partnership and standard and family. When you have lived long enough, you stop arguing with your instincts, you listen. Marcus grew up knowing how to be grateful without being naive. He learned how to accept generosity without surrendering himself to it. Or at least I thought he had. But weddings do something to young men. They soften the edges. They make acceptance feel like oxygen. They teach you to keep the peace even when your body is telling you something is wrong. That is why when my instinct spoke that morning, I did not push it away. I listened. Because I have learned this the hard way, silence can be dangerous. And the wrong silence can cost you everything. I met the Harrison family 8 months before the wedding, and everyone else adored them immediately. Robert Harrison had a commanding voice and impeccable posture. He dressed in tailored suits and spoke with the confidence of someone who had never been questioned. People described him as distinguished, strategic, proper. His wife, Patricia, stood beside him like a polished compliment. She smiled when he spoke, agreed when he decided. Her grace felt rehearsed, not natural. Their daughter, Amanda, Marcus's future wife, was polite and agreeable. She thanked me for raising him. She said all the right things. But when her father spoke, her eyes shifted downward, like a woman used to letting decisions happen around her. Their son, Gregory, lingered on the edges, watching, calculating. He treated family gatherings like board meetings, not celebrations. From the outside, they looked flawless as balanced, respectable, the kind of family country clubs admired and business partners deferred to without being asked. But I noticed the details others missed. The first time Robert shook my hand, he held it a second too long. He smiled and said, "You did an excellent job with him." Excellent. Like Marcus was a product that had turned out well. He spoke to Marcus with a closeness that felt less like respect and more like assessment. His compliments landed heavy, like investments being placed. He talked often about legacy, about how their family valued things done a certain way, about how marriage was not just emotion but structure and strategy. And every time he said those words, I felt my chest tighten. Because I had heard them before, in another conference room with documents on the table and a man smiling like he was doing me a favor. Everyone else saw mentorship. I saw choreography. And the more perfect they appeared, the more certain I became that something underneath was being carefully managed. I learned a long time ago that paper can do more damage than shouting ever will. The first time it happened to me, there was no argument, no raised voices, no slammed doors, just a quiet office that smelled like leather and authority after my business partner's sudden illness. I was exhausted in a way rest could not fix. Crisis does that to you. It slows your thinking. It makes you grateful for anyone who offers to help carry the weight. And next to them was a man I had never met, holding a leather folder. Robert smiled wide and warm. He said they were already nearby. He said this would only take a few minutes. He said it was just a formality. The man stepped forward and introduced himself as a notary. I felt the room tighten around us. Paper had arrived right on time. Robert did not wait to be invited inside. He stepped in as if the decision had already been made. He spoke while he moved, calm voice, pleasant tone. He said this would be quick. He said it was routine. He said, families like ours value things organized. The notary stood quietly near the table. He placed the folder down with care. No rush. No explanation. Just presence. That was the point. Robert turned to Marcus and smiled the way executives smile when they expect compliance. He said this was simply an acknowledgement. Nothing was being given away. Nothing would change. It was just paperwork. Patricia nodded once. Gregory smirked and leaned against the wall. Amanda stood there silent. Her eyes moved from the papers to the floor and back again. She did not speak. Robert slid the top page forward and tapped the signature line with one finger. He said, "Everyone does this." He said, "You do not want to start a marriage with complications." Complications. The word hung in the air like a warning dressed as advice. The notary opened his folder and set out his stamp and pen. The sound was small but final. It did not belong in a home. Marcus looked at the paper, then at Amanda. He waited for her to say something that would let him breathe. She did not. His hand hovered near the pen, not because he wanted to sign, but because he had been taught to be polite, because pressure feels heavier when it is wrapped in smiles. Robert softened his voice. He said Marcus was tired. He said this would put everyone at ease. He said they could all relax afterward. Relax, after he signed. I watched the room the way I learned to watch years ago. Who stood where? Who blocked exits? Who spoke? Who stayed quiet? This was not a conversation. It was a setup. 5 minutes. That is all it would have taken. 5 minutes and a signature could have shifted control in ways Marcus did not yet understand. The pen sat there waiting, small, ordinary, dangerous. And that was when I stepped forward. I did not raise my voice. I did not accuse anyone of anything. I stepped forward just enough to be seen and spoke calmly, the way you do when you are done being impressed by manners. Before he signs anything, I said, I need one thing clarified. Robert turned toward me with a smile that tightened at the corners. He said this was unnecessary. He said everything was standard. I did not look at him. I looked at the man with the folder. Which corporate entity are you referencing? I asked the notary. The question landed wrong. I could feel it. It did not belong in the script they had brought with them. The notary hesitated just a second, long enough to matter. Then he answered plainly. The Chun Family Corporation. Marcus turned toward me slowly. His eyes widened. Robert lifted his chin and said yes, exactly, like naming it made it harmless. I nodded once. Then I said the sentence that changed everything. That structure dissolved yesterday. The room shifted, not dramatically. Quietly, like a floor giving way under careful feet. The notary looked back down at the papers. This time, he did not skim. He read page by page, slower, more careful. Robert leaned forward and said they had done this before, that it was routine. His voice was still calm, but the warmth had thinned. The notary did not respond to him. He kept reading. When he finally spoke again, his tone had changed. He said, the original corporation dissolved upon marriage. A new trust structure has taken effect, one with different terms. He paused. Then he read the next line out loud. Spouses and in-laws are excluded. No one moved. Then he read further. Any attempt to pressure or rush the beneficiary will trigger forfeiture of future claims. The pen was quietly removed from the table. And for the first time since they arrived, Robert Harrison had nothing to say. Marcus did not shout. That was the first thing I noticed. He stepped back from the table slowly, like someone realizing the ground is not where they thought it was. His eyes moved from the papers to the notary and then to Robert. The ease he had carried all morning was gone. The notary cleared his throat and closed the folder. He said he could not proceed. He said he would need verification and clear consent. His voice stayed professional. Final. Robert tried to recover. He said there must be a misunderstanding. He said this could be handled later. He said everyone was overreacting. Marcus did not argue. He asked one question. You brought a notary to my grandfather's house the day after my wedding, without telling me. Robert replied that it was responsible, that this was how families protected each other. Marcus looked at Amanda, then really looked at her. He waited. She opened her mouth, closed it, and looked away. That was the moment something hardened behind his eyes. He told the notary, thank you. He told Robert the signing was over. He said, no more visits like this will happen again. His voice was calm, steady, not angry. Certain. Robert's smile thinned. He gathered the papers quickly, frustration leaking through his movements. The notary packed his things and left. When the door closed behind him, the house felt different, quieter, safer. Marcus stood there for a moment, breathing slowly. Then he reached into his pocket and sent a short message to Thomas Brennan. He told the attorney what had happened. He did not ask for permission. He did not apologize. He chose himself. And I knew then that whatever happened next, my grandson would not be easy to corner again. People talk about marriage like it only changes your last name. What it really changes is how bold other people become. Once vows are spoken, some families stop seeing boundaries. They start seeing access. They believe love has unlocked doors that were never theirs to open. I watched it happen in real time. Robert did not arrive angry. He arrived confident, certain he was entitled to Marcus's signature. Certain no one would challenge his timing. Certain politeness would do the work for him. That is how pressure works. It does not announce itself. It rushes you while smiling. It tells you it is for your own good. It warns you not to create complications when complications are already standing in your living room. Marriage makes young men want to prove they belong. It makes them fear disappointing people more than disappointing themselves. And people who know that will use it. Paper becomes the weapon, not because it is loud, but because it looks harmless. A pen, a line, a signature, all wrapped in language that sounds mature and responsible. What saved Marcus was not anger. It was awareness. He stopped trying to be agreeable and started paying attention. He learned something that day that took me years to learn: love does not require surrender. And family does not get access just because they demand it politely. Marriage does not mean you owe everyone your trust. It means you must protect it more carefully than ever. After they left, I locked the door and did not say anything for a long time. Marcus stood in the middle of my living room like someone seeing a familiar place for the first time. Not because it had changed, because he had. I went to the safe where I keep old papers and warnings written in my own hand. I placed the folder back inside and turned the key. The sound was soft. Final. Marcus watched me do it and nodded. He understood. Silence did not protect him by accident. It protected him because it was chosen, because it was held long enough for the truth to show itself. He did not lose his marriage that day. He lost an illusion. And that loss gave him clarity instead of fear. Some people call silence weakness. They are wrong. Sometimes silence is the lock that keeps predators out. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on where you may be rushing yourself to keep the peace. If you believe more people need to hear this story, please like and share it. And if you have ever been pressured to sign something you did not fully understand, tell us in the comments. Your experience might protect someone else.